Hello world, and welcome to Web Dev Frontiers. My name is Tamas, and I'm here to share my experience with you in web technologies. In today's video, we're going to put together a custom chat application where we're going to be utilizing OpenAI's ChatGPT models, making sure that we extend it with our own custom functionality, and hopefully this is going to blow your mind away. Now, of course, everywhere where you look, AI is just available. Everyone is talking about AI, so it's gaining a lot of traction. So of course, in this channel, I can't escape the AI craze myself either. So I thought I would record something that you will hopefully find useful. So if you're ready, let's go ahead and jump straight in. Now, before we get started with writing the actual code, what I would like you to do is to visit platform.openai.com and make sure that you register for an API key. Now, please bear in mind that this domain requires a different registration compared to ChatGPT. So if you already have a ChatGPT account, you can't use that, or you can reuse that if you want, but you need to create a separate registration on platform.openai.com. Once you register, make sure that you select the API keys on the left-hand side and just make sure that you generate an API key and that you note this up somewhere, because we are going to be using this API key in our application. And once you have the API key, make sure that you create a new Node.js project where you should create a .env file and just add your API key under this key called OpenAI_API_key. Okay, once you've done that, you are now ready to write the actual application. And once you've saved your environment file, you can now go ahead and write the same code that you see here. So what I'm doing, I'm importing OpenAI from the OpenAI package, which I need to install right now using npm-i. And so while this is going to be installing, I'm going to explain you the code. So what we have here is a new instance of OpenAI where we pass the actual API key that we just saved. And then we create a new chat by using the GPT 3.5 turbo model. And we pass in a messages array where each message contains an object where the role is set to system for the first one and for the second one is set to be the user. So with this first message, what we're doing, we're effectively setting up or giving a context to the model itself. So we're telling the model how it should behave. And I say, you are my assistant and you are knowledgeable about word currencies. If you don't know the answer, do not make stuff up nor make any assumptions, just simply state you don't know. And this second part is also very important because I want to make sure that the model does not hallucinate. Hallucination is when the AI models start to make up stuff that may not be 100% accurate. So they can really make stuff up. I just want to make sure that it will always give me facts and it will not create, creative answers, which, as I said, may or may not be correct. And then the second message that we send is the user message. So this, if you think about the ChatGPT interface, this would be you typing in the message itself, right? So the first one is more like a system message where we set up how the LLM should work. The second message is we're asking our LLM a question. And the question that I ask is, could you tell me about the USD? And so using the OpenAI SDK, you're going to get a results object and there's going to be a message in there, and I'm just going to print out the content. You can, feel free to play around with the response, see how it looks like, but for our purposes, this should work. So now I'm going to do a node command. I'm going to pass the environment file that we have, and then make sure that I start up app.js. Okay, and I'm going to hit enter, and hopefully we're going to get an answer from the GPT model. And there you have it. We get a very generic answer about the USD stands for the United States dollar, which is the official currency of the United States of America, etc., etc., etc. So exactly how you would expect a response to look like coming from something like a ChatGPT. Now, actually, let me get rid of this question and let me ask it another question, which is, am I better off buying USD or euros if I have 200 Japanese yen? So let's save this and let's rerun our app.js file and see what we get. Now, as you can see, the model responds with, I don't have real-time information on currency exchange rates, so I cannot provide you an accurate answer. So this is why I mentioned that making sure that the model does not hallucinate is added to that system message first. So basically it's saying, I'm sorry, I don't know, because I don't have access to real currency information and exchange rates. But we can actually change this. We can make sure that if we are asking a similar question to this one, that the GPT model can actually call a custom function and incorporate the result from that custom function in its response. And the possibilities are limitless, are really, really endless. You could create a custom function that can do anything. It could go to a database, execute queries, you could do whatever you want. But in this particular example, we're going to be using a package called Currency Converter, which I found on NPM, to allow us to make real-time currency conversions. So let's put this together right now. Now, our approach is going to be a little bit different because we're going to be allowing people to actually enter an argument when they execute this Node.js function, and we're going to capture that by using process.argv2. Okay, so this is the arguments that you pass. And so I'm going to be using this to start a conversation with a GPT model. And so now, once we have conversation messages, the next function I'm going to add is going to be the currency conversion. Now, you can look this package up on NPM, Currency Converter LT. So by all means, take a look at this package as well. But this is how the implementation is going to look like. So we're going to be looking for a particular regular expression match, and I'll let you figure this out on your own what it does. Here's a hint, you can actually put this into ChatGPT and it will tell you what it is. Otherwise, we're just going to get the amount, the source currency, the target currency from a sentence. So when essentially we send a sentence that says, hey, can you convert 100 USD to Japanese yen, is going to take 100 USD and then Japanese yen. And so I pass all that information to a new instance of the currency converter. And it's very simply documented on NPM how to use this. So we have a from, a to, and an amount, which needs to be a number. And then currency converter itself exposes a particular method called convert, which we can actually take a look at. Now, if you're curious, you can uncomment this line and you can also see the result of the conversion right here. But what's important is that this currency conversion function is going to return a conversion result. And this is the conversion result that we are going to be utilizing later on in our conversation. So let me collapse this and let's write the next thing that we require here. And this next function is going to be called fetch completion. So basically, this is where we create the conversation with the GPT 3.5 Turbo model again. Remember, we have our conversation messages, right? So it started as the first input from the user. But what's important here is that because we store that in a variable, we can make sure that we keep the context of the conversation as well later on. And then notice this third parameter, which we haven't seen in the very first example in the simple chat that we created, which is called functions. And in this functions array, I can now specify my own custom function. So I can specify the parameters, which would come in as objects. I can specify that the data types are going to be strings. And I'm also going to just give a description to this function, which basically says convert from one currency to another. For example, 100 USD to SGD. Okay, so this is just to describe what this custom function is going to do. And of course, we want to make sure that some data is going to be required for this particular function. Otherwise, if you don't send any data, then the currency conversion wouldn't be able to happen at the first place. Okay, and of course we gave it a name as well. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that this is just going to be called convert. And again, notice here the last option, temperature 0. So you can actually set up your LLMs and your models to do zero hallucination by actually stating it in a system message. Do not make stuff up. If you don't know, just say you don't know. Or you can actually control it via this temperature setting. So temperature 0 means zero hallucination. And this value can go from 0 to 1 and anywhere in between. If you give it a value of 1, then it's going to essentially very deliberately make stuff up sometimes, or be very, very creative, whereas 0 says don't be creative, just use the data that you have and you're absolutely certain that that is going to be accurate. Okay, so we have fetch completion as well. All we need to do now is stitch these two things together, and we're going to be doing that inside a while loop to make sure that we constantly keep the conversation going. And this is how that loop would look like. It's just a very simple while loop. Then we get a response. And then if you notice here, there's going to be a couple of if statements, or if else statements rather. First of all, if you had a look at the response object when I told you so in the previous example, then you may have noticed that there's a finish reason property that basically says stop when the model has finished responding. So if it stopped, meaning that it was able to generate you some response based on its knowledge base, then we're just going to print out whatever it had to say, again, by going to messages.content. Now, otherwise, if there is a reason, which is function call, it means that you ask something that the model believes, in conjunction with, of course, the OpenAI SDK, that it can answer by running your own custom function. And so if that is the case, then we are going to look into the currency conversion function. So that's going to be the function that we want to invoke. And then we send it the parameters as well. And parameters is just going to be the arguments that would come from the message itself. So basically the OpenAI SDK model is able to parameterize the required options for us, and then we can send it to function to invoke. Now, once we do that, then all we need to do is just make sure that the actual response that comes back from the currency converter function in this case is then going to be added in a conversation type setting to the response itself. And so that's why, remember, we have conversation messages, right, which we started here, which is going to push a new value into that conversation message. And we're going to say that, hey, this comes from the function. And then the result itself is going to be the result of the function that we invoked. Well, what is the function that we invoked? It's going to be the currency conversion function, which we have specified here. So hopefully you see the logic here, right? You have a function where you do your own logic. It could be an API call, it could be a database query, it could be whatever you want. And then if there is something inside the particular conversation that the model decides that it cannot answer, but it can answer it by running your own custom function, it's going to be running that, okay? Or it's going to invoke your custom function, and then it's going to take the response, because in our case, the currency conversion response just comes back with a number, right? So, 100 USD is, I don't know, 120 euros, for example, but it's going to incorporate that into a chat type response so that seemingly you now have this wonderful model that is able to answer all sorts of questions. Okay, so now that we have everything in place, let's save all this and let's test this out. Okay, so we're going to ask the same question that we asked it before. Could you tell me about the United States dollar? So let's run this. And so let's run this and see what answer we get back from our model. Okay, so again, we have a similar response that says the USD or United States dollar is the official currency of the United States of America. So exactly what we had before. But now let's see what happens when we ask our question that before the model was not able to answer. Am I better off buying USD or euros if I have 200 Japanese yen? So let's see, the moment of truth. So here's the answer. If you have 200 Japanese yen, you would get approximately 1.29 USD or 1.21 euros based on the conversion rates. Therefore, you would get slightly more value by converting 200 Japanese yen to USD. Okay, so let's see if this is actually correct. So I'm going to open up my browser and I'm going to ask Google to take a look at 200 Japanese yen to USD and look at that. It's 1.29. If I take a look at euros, it's 1.21. So this is in fact real conversion data, accurate as of the 22nd of April when I'm recording this particular video. So this tells me that the currency converter function was actually called by the model and it was able to give me a very, very solid response. And just for fun, let's try to ask it another question. Say, can you help me convert 200,000 Singapore dollars to the money that they use in Spain? So let's see if it can answer this for us. It should be able to. There we go. 200,000 Singapore dollars is equivalent to approximately 137,000 euros in Spain. So it knows that there's euros. And if we just go back to here, to our Google verification, then we can check that it is spot on. All right. And that's all that I wanted to show you in this particular video. I hope you enjoyed it and hopefully you see the limitless number of opportunities that custom functions can have you do within whatever project you're working really. So imagine that, you have packages on NPM that would do database queries, that would do fetch API requests, and then you can incorporate all that data, which can be real live data as well, as you saw with the currency conversion, into your project or into your responses in a GPT type conversation. If you have used something like this, then I would love to hear it. So please leave a comment under this video. If you like this content, then I would appreciate a thumbs up, and please make sure to also subscribe for the channel for such content coming in the future. Thank you for watching and have a good one.